Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving right into the incredibly complex, millennia-spanning evolution of Nepal. We're going to unpack exactly how a region steeped in ancient myths transformed all the way into a modern republic. And let me tell you, it is an absolutely fascinating journey.
So let's kick things off with a pretty foundational question. Where does the name Nepal actually come from? Now, you might be wondering, with written records dating back to the 5th century, shouldn't we know this for sure? Well, the actual origin of the name remains a bit of a historical mystery, wrapped in layers and layers of local tradition.
Even though the exact origin is debated, there are some incredible theories out there. For northern Tibetan sheepherders, Ne means wool and Pal means house, making it the House of Wool. Makes sense, right? Alternatively, the indigenous Nuar people of the Kathmandu Valley called their homeland Nepa, which translates to country of the middle zone. Then you have the Lepcha people, who tied the name to a sacred cave. But honestly, perhaps the most charming theory is a shared Hindu and Buddhist legend about a protector sage named Ne, who looked after the newly drained Kathmandu Valley. Since Pala means protector in the ancient language, the land literally became Nepal.
To really make sense of this epic story, we're going to chart Nepal's evolution through 5 distinct eras. Number 1, myths and early origins. 2, the medieval dynasties. 3, the Great Unification. 4, wars and the Rana rule. And finally, number 5, the dawn of democracy.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Myths and Early Origins. We're covering everything from the Stone Age right up to the Guptas.
Stepping way back into deep antiquity, the very first documented tribes in Nepal were the Tibeto-Burman Karat people, around 800 BCE. Then, just a couple of centuries later, right around 600 BCE, Gautama Buddha was born into the oligarchic Shakya Republic. We also see the profound influence of India super early on. The great Mauryan emperor Ashoka actually visited in 249 BCE, founding the city of Lali-Patan. And by 350 CE, the powerful Gupta Empire had officially recorded Nepal as a frontier tributary kingdom.
Moving on to Section 2, the medieval dynasties. This is the era of the Tokoris, the Mallas, and the Golden Age of Valleys.
What's absolutely vital to understand about this medieval era is how it's anchored by some incredibly enduring cultural traditions. Believe it or not, King Gudakamadeva commissioned a massive wooden shelter built entirely from a single tree. It was called Kastamandapa, which literally gives the modern capital, Kathmandu, its name today. His successors instituted deeply rooted religious traditions that are still practiced right now, like the worship of the living goddess, the Kumari, and the pasting of serpent deities, or Nagas, on doors for protection.
So, following the Thokuris, the Malla dynasty steps up in the 12th century, and they brought about a true golden age of art and architecture. They even sent the brilliant architect Aranico all the way to China, which actually introduced the iconic pagoda style to Asia. However, this golden age ended in total disaster. In 1484 CE, upon the death of Yakshamala, the Kathmandu Valley fatally fractured into competing independent states. And this division triggered centuries of debilitating internecine wars.
Those chaotic wars set the stage perfectly for Section 3, the Great Unification and the rise of the Shah dynasty.
Enter Prithvi Narayan Shah of Gorkha. He looked at this situation and realized that a fractured valley simply could not survive. So he launched a highly aggressive, systematic campaign. Step 1, he captures Nuwakot. Step 2, he secures the Kormali Pass, which effectively chokes off the valley's trade with Tibet. In 1767, the Valley Kings were so desperate they actually called the British East India Company for backup. But, against all odds, Shah's army defeated the British at Kirtipur. By 1769, he had systematically conquered the valley, formally establishing the unified kingdom of Nepal.
And Shah described his newly unified nation with a quote that is just unforgettable. He called it a yam between two boulders. It's a perfect, almost humorous metaphor for a very serious geopolitical reality. It perfectly defined Nepal's continuous, precarious balancing act between the massive empire of Qing China to the north and the rapidly expanding British India to the south.
That delicate balancing act brings us to Section 4, Wars and the Rana rule, an era defined by isolation and the British threat. As you can imagine, the newly unified Nepal's imperial ambitions
quickly led to some heavy clashes with both of those bordering boulders. First, an invasion of Tibet triggered the Sino-Nepalese War, which resulted in Nepal having to accept tributary status to the Qing dynasty. Then, decades later, border friction with the British East India Company sparked the Anglo-Nepalese War. Severely outgunned, Nepal suffered heavy losses and was forced to sign the Treaty of Sugoli in 1816, permanently ceding large portions of their territory.
Then, in 1846, domestic politics took a truly bizarre turn. Actually, scratch that. It was a bloody coup d'etat. The Rana family forcefully usurped control from the ruling Shah kings. What they established was this incredibly strange dynamic, a hereditary autocracy where Rana prime ministers took the title of Maharaja and held literally all the real power. Meanwhile, they deliberately kept the Shah monarchs locked away as mere figureheads with the title Maharaja di Raja.
Now, under Rana rule, Nepal did successfully maintain its independence, but it came at a massive cost: strict, freezing isolation from the outside world. Paradoxically, while keeping the borders entirely closed, they strategically aligned militarily with the British, even sending Nepalese battalions to support the Allies in both world wars. But this extreme isolation severely impeded internal economic development and modernization. They basically froze Nepal in time, though they did make a few progressive moves, most notably abolishing slavery in 1924.
Okay, let's dive into our final era, Section 5, the dawn of democracy, the 1951 revolution and beyond.
You know, that kind of strict isolation just couldn't last forever. Influenced heavily by the successful Indian independence struggle right next door, educated Nepalese exiles and internal dissidents banded together. And incredibly, they were even joined by marginalized wings of the Rana family itself. Together in 1951, they launched a revolution to successfully overthrow the Rana regime, aiming to finally liberate Nepal from family autocracy. But we have to recognize that this democratic dawn did not come without immense sacrifice. Dharmabhakta Mahatma, Shukraj Shastri, Gangalal Shrestha, and Dasharat Chand were prominent leaders of the Praja Parasad movement. For daring to oppose the regime and demanding democratic rights, all four were executed by the Ranas. They became absolute national martyrs, and their deaths quite literally fueled the revolution.
The decades following that 1951 revolution were definitely not smooth. The country saw immense turmoil, civil wars, and intense struggles over the constitution. But it all culminated in a historic, monumental turning point. In 2006, the Nepalese parliament took a vote to abolish the monarchy entirely. 2 years later, in 2008, the 200-year-old reign of the Shah dynasty officially ended for good, and the nation was reborn as a federal democratic republic.
So what does this all mean for us today? When you look at Nepal now, its rich, multi-ethnic tapestry, its distinct cultural traditions, and its incredibly careful diplomatic balancing act in South Asia, you can see the direct lines drawn from thousands of years of survival, isolation, and revolution. It leaves us with a vital question to chew on. How do the ancient, isolated roots of that yam between two boulders continue to shape its future today? Thank you for exploring this incredible explainer with me.